Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Mi, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Roronoa Zoro is one of the most important characters in our story of One Piece, and throughout his journey, he's never really shown any interest in any other characters, at least romantically speaking, because he aims to achieve the dream of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world, because of his agreement and promise to Kuina so many years ago. Because of Zoro's dream, he's avoided any relationships with anybody because he's been solely focused on achieving this goal. But in the end, there probably is at least somebody that Zoro can fall in love with and may end up creating feelings for. So in today's video, we're going to talk about who Zoro might marry at the end of our story of One Piece, what evidence that links these two characters together, and how the relationship may actually come together. But before we get into our romantic speculation, if you're new to the channel or even if you watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like. And if you haven't, subscribe and maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content. And if you'd like to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or your favorite with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into this video. So my friends, as we know, Zoro was born in the East Blue. Now we don't know much about his parents or even other relatives that he might have, which makes his parentage and background a bit of a mystery. At the age of 8, Zoro trained in a dojo in Shimotsuki village, training to become strong enough so that he would be able to defend himself alone, without the need for anyone to take care of him, since apparently he did live alone and he didn't have anyone else to depend on but himself. Zoro abandoned every other desire but swordplay to achieve this life goal, and it was during the Baratier arc where he stated that he had decided that he was going to be the greatest swordsman in the world, so nothing else in the world mattered. This meant that he left any desires or ideas of living as just a normal person, or even ambitions just to complete this one singular goal of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world, not even caring if it would cost him his life. Even as a child, Zoro was very strong and was able to defeat most adults, but he could never defeat Kuina, the dojo master's daughter, which made him really frustrated because he didn't want to be losing to a woman. And again, these are kind of the thoughts of an 8-year-old boy. During a training session, Zoro got to meet Kuina's grandfather, Shimotsuki Kozuburo, who presented him with a pair of swords to help him practice, allowing the training to flow in a much better way for Zoro's fighting style. Zoro and Kuina had a great rivalry, and in the past, it's said that they fought more than 2,000 times. And in all of those fights, Kuina always beat Zoro, but he still wouldn't give up taking her on because he wanted to prove that he could be stronger than her. Although he improved tremendously through all of these duels, every time he lost, he would cry in frustration, telling Kuina about his dream of wanting to become the greatest swordsman in the world. Hearing this, Kuina told Zoro that she too had this dream of being the greatest swordsman in the world, saying that she shared this same exact dream, but she knew in the end she would never be able to achieve it because her father told her that girls could never be true swordsmasters, and that their fighting potential would decrease as their bodies matured. Zoro gets angry with her attitude, but then realizes that she's giving up on her dream just because she is female, and even goes further to prove her totally wrong and shouts at her because every duel that they had, she always beat him. So her skill had nothing to do with the fact that she was a woman. She was just better. Zoro goes on to say that one day he will beat Kuina because she is the most skilled person that he knew. And the fact that she was a woman didn't change the fact that she was a great swordsman, completely recognizing and honoring Kuina's great potential and ability. Then and there, the two made a promise that one of them would become the greatest swordsman in the world, no matter what the circumstances that they would face during the journey. Zoro or Kuina would have to achieve this dream. The next day, Kuina suffered a fatal accident where she fell down the stairs of the dojo, causing her to lose her life after the fall, which left Zoro traumatized, creating a great feeling of anger and hatred in his heart for no longer having his rival to compete with. Aside from losing the only friend that he'd ever had, and the person who cared about him most, Zoro was now alone again. But once he realized that Kuina would never be able to have the chance to fulfill their dream, Zoro took it upon himself to achieve it for the both of them. And then he went to her father, Kushiro, to ask for her sword, the Wado Ichimonji. And he then started working on developing his 3-sword style. With his 3-sword style, Zoro held one sword in each hand, and then the Wado Ichimonji, Kuina's sword, clenched between his teeth. And this unique fighting style was a way for him to be able to get stronger and fight in ways that no other swordsman could. And in a way, Kuina would always be with him and would in fact help him on his journey to become the greatest swordsman in the world. Kuina could have been the very first woman that Zoro even cared about, or even first person, and this created a very deep bond between them. And although he was small and maybe not fully able to understand his feelings beyond friendship and competitiveness towards her, he may have actually had his very first crush, but lost her tragically. But the memories of Kuina and the time that they spent together have still lingered in Zoro's mind. And after many years, he still had always thought about her when he thought about his own goal of being the greatest swordsman in the world. And it wasn't until he met Tashigi who he kind of rekindled this feeling that he'd had in his heart. Because Tashigi is very much like Kuina, even her desire to become a great expert swordsman, if not the greatest swordsman in the world. So like before, Kuina was to Zoro as what Tashigi was to Zoro. Great enemies, but rivals, because Tashigi is after all part of the Marines, but still admires Zoro's sword skill and technique. So far in the story, we've seen that Zoro has a better sword skill than Tashigi, being just like Kuina was to him when they were children, which makes Tashigi want to go out and become stronger in order to be able to confront him and take him down in the future. Once Zoro perfected his three-sword technique, he became a bounty hunter to become the world's greatest swordsman, because bounty hunters are nothing more than people hired or at least commissioned by the world government to hunt criminals. Even after many years, Zoro had kept his promise in mind, and even after giving up being a pirate hunter and joining Luffy's crew, thus becoming a pirate, Zoro had his first opportunity to become, or at least test himself, against the greatest swordsman in the world. During the Baratier arc, we see that he is able to meet Hawkeye Mihawk, the current world's greatest swordsman. And Hawkeye didn't target Zoro, but Zoro dared to get in his way, challenging him to a duel. Now, although Zoro did lose quickly to Mihawk, he earned his respect by saying that he would never lose again, making a promise to Luffy, to himself, and even, in his heart, to Kuina. Because as I mentioned before, the Wado Ichimonji represents Kuina to him, and he intends to fulfill his dream and his promise to her, doing his utmost to be able to one day defeat Mihawk in the future and win to take the title. Early on in the Straw Hat adventures, Zoro ended up meeting Captain Tashigi, who is a Marine officer serving under Vice Admiral Smoker at the G5 base, and he noticed that she was very similar to his old friend, which made him take at least a certain interest. Zoro and Tashigi haven't had hugely important interactions thus far, but they have clashed from time to time, and at least one of them may want to see the other again. So this could be setting it up that in the future, there will be a big showdown between them. And as we've thought about it in our current story, we know that they're on Egghead Island, and Tashigi is not far away on a military base. So with this proximity, this could create an event where Zoro and Tashigi could not only clash swords, but end up having some kind of encounter together. But it would be forbidden because one's a sailor and one's a pirate, which could be kind of a problem for Tashigi. One of the reasons why this might be a big problem for Tashigi is that she's always looked at Zoro and kind of even held a grudge against him, believing that he only uses his swords as a means to earn money bounty hunting. And when she discovered that he was a pirate, that was when she challenged him to a proper duel. And when Zoro defeated her, she still refused to accept the defeat unless he actually cut her. One of Tashigi's goals, because she is an absolutely bonkers sword enthusiast, is to defeat Zoro to take the Wado Ichimonji, because she believes that such a renowned and beautiful blade should never be in the hands of a criminal. So much later, she realized that Zoro was also wielding Shusui, which even further increased her interest. After the 2-year time skip, when Tashigi and Zoro interacted again, she had a respectful understanding of how much he had grown during that time, and she also learned that she was also wrong about him not attacking women after seeing him cut Monet when he was defending himself on Punk Hazard. This showed her that Zoro really wasn't who she thought he was, and she slowly developed a even deeper respect for him, and may even be able to create an even more affectionate relationship as we go towards the end of our story of One Piece. Another character who has a certain kind of connection with Zoro and could possibly turn into a pretty great pairing with him would be Nico Robin, because she's the Straw Hat that kind of has some some of the most in common with him, and also is the crew member that bothers him the least. When Robin joined the Straw Hat crew after the Alabasta arc, he didn't trust her at first and thought that she might be hiding her true intentions. However, Zoro still respected her as a member of the crew, and he came to further respect her intelligence and then developed a actual love, if not camaraderie, with her. Now, the love I speak of is that common love among all of the Straw Hats, not in necessarily a romantic sense, because we saw that despite his doubts, Zoro started to protect her, and he showed willingness to protect her even when Robin was in danger, like when Aokiji threatened Robin. Zoro, together with Luffy and Sanji, went to her rescue, putting themselves in the front lines to protect her. During the Skypiea arc, when Enel brutally attacked Robin, Zoro gets even angrier and attacks him and proclaims himself a god to avenge her. And finally, after the Enies Lobby arc, Zoro had built a complete trust in Robin and had fully accepted her as a friend, just like the rest of the crew. And even Robin herself is always willing to protect Zoro. Robin's caught Zoro after he was thrown in the air by oars during Thriller Bar, and even tried to save him from Zoro. And also, she stopped him from dying due to the water pressure when he tried to get off the ship on their way to Fishman Island. After the time skip, the two still get along really well and are often seen together, prioritizing each other's kind of needs. And even during the Zou arc, Zoro gave a proud smile on his face when Robin said she wasn't afraid of being kidnapped because she knew her friends would protect her. These moments show that our two characters have a great bond and have a great friendship, and in the future, we don't know where it could go and whether it could develop into something much more than we've seen so far. One recently new, or at least renewed opportunity is Jewelry Bonney, and she might also be a good fit for Zoro. They first met when Zoro was quietly walking towards St. Charlos, a world noble, while everyone around him was bowing to him. When Charlos saw that Zoro wasn't bowing himself, he viewed this action as disrespectful, so he pointed a pistol in Zoro's direction. And Zoro was about to attack in response and knock the world noble out, but Bonney managed to restrain him, making the world noble think that he had taken Zoro's life. Once the world noble left, thinking that he had just shot Zoro, Bonney looked at him and started criticizing him for being reckless in front of a world noble. Zoro and Bonney didn't exactly see eye to eye and don't see each other much after that, but recently in the manga we've seen that she's reappeared in the story, and her and Zoro may end up reconnecting. But whether Bonney was looking out for Zoro in a tactical sense, or maybe something a little bit more, we'll have to wait and see how the story develops, because it could be just something where Bonnie's a crew member and they mutually respect each other, or could be something else. But there's one other character that we want to talk about that may be the one that all of you have been waiting to hear about. Now, the next character we're going to talk about is somebody who's actually had an opportunity to make a romantic connection with Zoro. And that character, of course, is Hiori, because we've seen that Zoro has already risked his life to save her from Orochi, a ninja, and even fought Killer, and he was shown to not only just fight and protect her, but he seemed to care about her well-being. And when he protected her from Killer, he had been doing this despite already having fought Onimaru on the bridge in Ringo. Hiori has also shown a certain level of comfort when she's by Zoro's side, and even tended to his wounds after the fight and slept on his chest during a cold night, and even cried into his chest when Yasui had been publicly executed. And let's also not forget that Hiori kinda gave Zoro a major upgrade. After learning that Zoro owned Shusui, Hiori respectfully asked him to return it to Ryuma's resting place because it was a national treasure. And in return, she offered him her only inheritance from her father, the Enma sword, in a form of respect because she understood that Zoro needed 3 swords. So as our story moves forward, perhaps there might be some magic already there and growing between our Princess of Wano and favorite mossy-haired swordsman. Another person that Zoro has had interactions with, and especially over the time skip, was Perona. But it's really not known if we would consider it a friendship or something like that, because Perona kinda saved Zoro and took him into the castle after treating his injuries. But his bandages didn't really look good because she didn't really have the medical skills necessary to tend to his wounds properly. But during the time skip, we also see times where Perona tends to Zoro's wounds again after he finished his training with Mihawk, as well as helping Zoro return to the Sabati archipelago, and then helping him find his crew before they had to escape from the Marines. So there could be a little bit of possibility with our ghosty goth queen, but there's one other possibility we want to mention before we end our video today. The final person that we'd like to mention is, of course, our very own navigator, Nami. Now, we've seen Nami and Zoro constantly argue arguing about the smallest and pettiest things, and often are seen as really kind of a way of comic relief in very serious situations. And it's because they've known each other for the longest time, and he's seen interacting with her often because most of their conversations are fights or arguments in front of the rest of the crew. Even though they might have different ideologies or aims, Zoro has complete trust in Nami and her ability to navigate the ship, just as she absolutely trusts Zoro's fighting ability and recognizes his amazing ability with swords. And they've both helped each other in times of trouble, no matter what it took to save each other's life. Just think back to Arlong Park and how Zoro and Sanji and Luffy fought to get Nami free of Arlong's reign. So although Zoro might act like he doesn't care about Nami, his actions show quite the opposite, and that he really does care about her. And a good example of this would be when Nami got sick after being bitten in Little Garden. Zoro is seen beside Nami's bed and even offers to navigate the ship instead of Nami to help her rest, despite his awful sense of direction. Another example happened before the Straw Hats entered the upper yard in Skypiea. When Zoro found out that Nami had been swallowed by Nola, or that Master of the Sky, the giant snake that lived in the upper yard of Skypiea, Zoro shouted, telling her to just wait a moment because he would be saving her soon, hoping against hope that she was still alive. And in this shows his desire for Nami to survive and rescue her after he was done fighting. Even after the time skip, Zoro still kinda acts as Nami's bodyguard, and we saw in Punk Hazard when Monet went after Nami, Zoro appears and cuts Monet in half, thus saving Nami's life. And we've seen where she also cares deeply for Zoro. When Zoro was recovering after his encounter with Kuma, that came as a result of the iconic nothing happened scene. Nami was one of the two Straw Hats that stood beside his bed, showing that she cared deeply about her friend. So there you have it, my friends. These are the women that Zoro could end up having a relationship towards the end of our story of One Piece. And for now, we'd love to know what you think about it. Who do you think is the greatest possibility? Or is there somebody else that we forgot about and you think would make a better match for Zoro? Secondly, do you think Zoro is even the type to want to have a relationship? Or do you think rather he will remain married to being the greatest swordsman in the world? And finally, are there any other people that you'd like us to review on the Straw Hats and talk about who they may end up with in the end? Let us know what you think in the comments below. So as we wrap up our video, I want to thank you all so much for sticking and watching the video all the way up to the very end. Be sure to comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like and hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.